All right, welcome back everyone in Hall 2. I just heard from Simon, who's joining us, that this is going to be little bit of a participatory talk, so you can't just, sort of sit and listen and lurk. You probably need to do some stuff. So, get on it, sit straight, active seating, because there's going to be questions and you'll need to answer those. All right. So for any progress, we must not just change technology, right? We must also rewrite the rules governing how that technology is used. SRE, DevOps, and platform engineering are equally about the technology as they are about rethinking how teams are designed and organized, and helping us understand how to apply this social technological thinking to our organization is Simon. Simon's career has taken him from being a developer in the trenches to helping various organizations take pragmatic steps from a place of chaos and paralysis to one where it becomes a little easier to see the wood for the trees. I would love to see a little virtual applause for Simon. And Simon, whenever you're ready, please take it away.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Paul. I think you gave me a better introduction I could have done myself, so thank you very much. And I think you've also nicely summarized the talk. Right, let me do my best. So as Paul said, hi, I'm Simon. My aim is to help happier staff deliver better things faster. And thank you so much for having me. I have a little scan. I see everyone's doing this. I kind of wanted to get in the action. If there's any point you find something useful here, there's a website, curiouscoffee.club. By all means, have a look. Hopefully there's a bit more there for you. But yes, I hope, as Paul says, to be talking about why I think technology is necessary but not sufficient to bring bottom line benefits. And there's really only three things in this talk. The first one is to talk about the goal of a business, because without a goal, there is no improvement. The second is to try to bring this to life, so it's not just concepts that are abstract, but real things that you can apply. And I do that by introducing a fictional business called Encom, based on true stories in the field. And then the final one is to summarize and talk about the role of technology and improvement, which is really what I promised. I'm going to ask questions, as Paul said, and those questions aren't to test you, they're to test me to make sure I'm conveying the material in a way that makes sense. I hope what you have is on the right-hand side of my video. There's three tabs: chat, info, Q&A. If you go to the Q&A tab, at certain points during the presentation, I'll be inviting your input. That helps me learn and helps me make sure I convey the material in a way that's useful to you. So stay tuned. I am drawing on a lot of thinking on this presentation, including my father, including my mentor, Noah, in the bottom left, as well as other amazing people. All good ideas are theirs, all bad ideas are mine, basically. So let's talk about the goal of a business. The goal of a business for me is to increase profits now in the future. And I hope as I say that, it sounds really capitalistic. It really gets the hair on the back of your neck standing up. It sounds very cold. But there's three words here that are really important, and that's in the future. And the reason for that is we can't increase profits of a business now and in the future if we don't satisfy the market, if we don't look after our customers, if we don't preserve the environment, as well as look after our shareholders. If there's no environment, if we ruin the environment today, we can't increase profits tomorrow. If we don't look after our customers today, we can't create a profit tomorrow. And even closer to my heart, we need to provide a secure and satisfying environment for employees. If we don't look after our staff today, there won't be any future for our organization. Those staff will leave, they'll go to other organizations. And so in order to increase profits now in the future, not only do we need to look after shareholders, of course, we need to look after our staff, we need to look after our customers, we need to look after the environment. Otherwise, there'll be no profits in the future. I hope that made sense. So I hope something that maybe felt quite capitalistic is actually quite maybe communistic, something where we'll need to look after everyone to succeed. And if you do subscribe to that thinking, if you just believe me for a little bit longer, I believe there's two ways to increase profits with that in mind. The first way is to prioritize reducing costs. And in my simplistic mind, all I mean by that is making sure of all the money that flows into our business, that less flows back out. We have more staying in our pockets, staying with us as profits. And the second way is to just make sure that more money flows into our organization in the very first place. We have more revenue. So two ways: reduce costs or increase revenues. And the key word here is prioritize. It's not that if we prioritize reducing costs, we forget about revenue. And it's not that if we prioritize increasing revenue, we let costs spiral out of control. It's simply which one do we place in first place. There can only be one. And there's two interesting things for me about prioritizing reducing costs. The first thing is, if we prioritize reducing cost, if we prioritize cost reduction, we lose our ability to focus. Everything in an organization is a cost. Travel expenses, paying staff, infrastructure, cloud costs, fixing a printer on the second floor. Everything in an organization is a cost. And if our priority is to reduce costs, everything's a priority and nothing's a priority. We lose our ability to focus. The second thing that's interesting about prioritizing cost reduction is we can only reduce costs down to zero. There's a limit to how far we can go. And the perverse thing is if we do reduce our business costs down to zero, it means we don't have a business left. So actually, we don't want to be fully successful. And there's two interesting things for me also about prioritizing increasing revenue. The first thing is theoretically, it's not this easy, but theoretically, you can increase revenue no end. There's no upper bound, and that's reassuring. But the second thing is, and this is what I want to try and convince you of through the rest of this presentation, if we prioritize increasing revenue, it gives us a very clear focus for improvement throughout our organization. But hold me to that. So, recap. Prioritizing cost reduction inhibits focus, because if in an organization everything is a cost, where do we begin? Where do we end? We lose our ability to focus. And also prioritizing cost reduction limits improvement, because we can only reduce costs down to zero. And if we are successful, perversely, we've wound down our business. And secondly, prioritizing revenue growth provides a clear focus, which I'll try and convince you of for the rest of the presentation. And secondly, unlimits improvement, because we can theoretically increase revenue at no end. So I want to now talk about Encom, a fictional business based on true stories, just to bring these ideas to life so they're not just abstract concepts. Encom here is a bespoke software business. So they write customized software for their customers. The journey of for the customers start with customers needing help. They have a problem and they feel that custom software is the way of solving that problem. We have a sales team at Encom that bring those customers into the business. We have designers who design the user interface for that software. We then have developers who then create the underlying software. And we have a finance team who, once the software has been written, collect payment. And at the very end, hopefully that's revenue. So 4 steps to revenue. Looks like a monopoly board. Let's just go all the way. And our aim is to get projects from left to right as quickly as possible, from customers who want software built to built software, payment collected, revenue. This is the first time I want you to go to the Q&A tab. And I want you to try and, from what little I've told you, answer the question, how can Encom increase revenue? If you were the CEO, the director of Encom, from what little I've told you, how would you go about trying to increase Encom's revenue? I'll give you a second. And we'll see if anything comes up. Gives me a chance to have a bit of coffee. Increase prices. Thanks, Phil. I don't disagree. There's an interesting thing about increasing prices, which is, I think the market sets the price. So we're somewhat constrained by our competitors, but I don't disagree. Any other ideas? So let me try and answer it. Let me see what comes up for you. So I'm very, very simplistic. More features, don't disagree. Don't disagree. Find more customers, don't disagree. Other market segments, absolutely. Keep them coming. Keep them coming. I'll keep checking Q&A now and then. But I'll have a few more questions so you have more opportunity to get involved as and when suits. I realize some of you might be drinking coffee or otherwise unable to participate. So let me try and answer it from a very simplistic perspective, because I am a very simple mind. So if I was CEO of Encom, I would look at that final step there, collecting payments, and I'd be like, that's where the revenue comes into our organization. So if we just do that one step faster, if we get the finance team to collect payments faster, then we'll have more money coming in any given period, and we've increased revenue, right? But the problem is that I realize as I say that, we can't collect payments for software that we haven't completed on behalf of our customers. We have to live up to our end of the bargain. So in order to increase the rate at which we collect payments, we also need to increase the rate at which we develop software. But in order to increase the rate we deliver software, we need to increase the rate we design the interfaces. We can't in this case, develop software without the user interfaces having been agreed by the client. Okay, but the problem is we can't design interfaces for customers we don't yet have. That's like Minority Report. That would be pretty amazing, but we can't do that. So all I'm saying is that all these steps are interlinked, and if we just do everything faster, we'll create more revenue in any given period. I don't know about you, but I don't think that's very helpful. And as much as I like the Monopoly board visualization, I think it's actually distracting me. And I think there's something I've missed here. If I instead visualize an organization, or NCOM in this case, as a pipe, I think it helps me realize where I was wrong was I was assuming that every part of an organization works at the same rate, the same clock speed. And that's not necessarily correct. Even if we just look at the software development part of an organization, we can see that work starts to pile up between teams. And that's for many reasons, don't get me wrong. But one of those reasons is that those different teams work at different rates through no fault of their own. And that's just what we saw at NCOM. We saw that the development team was doing the least and the most amount of time through no fault of their own. By definition, there will always be a bottleneck. There will always be a team that's moving the slowest. In this case, it was the development team. And the way that we could tell was that work was more often piling up in front of them consistently compared to other teams. Again, no judgment on the development team. They're doing something unique, and they're going to work at a different rate. But there's something really interesting about a bottleneck, and that's why I bring this up. If we imagine that in this case, the development team, the bottleneck, could deliver one project a month, and all the other teams could had a much faster rate of operation, all the other teams could operate much, much faster than the development team, the rate at which the entire of NCOM can generate revenue is equal to one project a month, the same as the bottleneck. And the reason for that is if we imagine the finance team who can collect 10 payments for 10 projects a month, if we can't collect payments on work that we haven't yet developed, we can't collect payments at a rate faster than one project a month. We're subordinated to the development team. We need to work only at the speed they can operate. So everything else there is excess capacity that we can't utilize. So then I have a question. I'm going to come back to the same question. I've told you a little bit more. How would you increase revenue at NCOM? If you're the CEO, if you're the director, where would you focus your efforts? I'm going to pause, have another sip of coffee, see if anything comes up for you in the Q&A. Otherwise, I'll continue and give you my simplistic answer. Right, let me give you what I've got. So what I generally hear is that we need to focus improvement in the development team. If they are, through no fault of their own, the bottleneck, the team that's moving at the slowest rate, and revenue at NCOM as a whole depends on increasing the rate at which they operate, let's help them. Let's do everything we can to help them move faster. The next question I generally ask the audience is, what happens if we focus improvement anywhere else apart from the development team? And in this case, the answer I tend to receive, oh, sorry, I saw Michael's scale development. Yes, sorry, you're quite right. I didn't scroll down, just in your answer. So you're spot on, thank you. And so then the next question is this one. If anything comes up for you, please drop it into Q&A. This time I promise I'll scroll down, otherwise I'll continue. What happens if we focus improvement anywhere else apart from the development team, apart from scaling development, as Michael puts it? The answer I normally get here is work piles up faster. And yes, Flo, you got it right. Yeah, I believe that you'll still get stuck in development. So all we're doing is we're causing more work to pile up faster in front of the development team. It's not helping. There's normally one question. I'll answer this one cheekily. What would happen if we unilaterally cut costs? If we cut headcount across the organization by 20%, what would happen here? And everything would shrink, right? And the important thing is that in this case, the capacity, the throughput, the rate at which the development team works would probably reduce in roughly the same amount, which means our revenue will reduce by the same amount because they're the bottleneck. So let me try and summarize. So the rate a business can generate money is equal to the rate of the slowest moving part, the bottleneck. If our priority is improving revenue, now we have a clear focus, the bottleneck. And this is what I promised you at the beginning, that if our focus is on increasing revenue in our organization, we now have a clear focus compared to the cost world, where if we're trying to cut costs, everything's a focus. We lose our ability to focus. And improvement anywhere else is waste. That's a flaw you have point out. Optimizing development process. Peter, you're right. Yeah, it's spot on the money. So I'm seeing the Q&A come in a little bit delayed. That's my fault for not appreciating that. Right, okay. So let me talk a little bit about bottlenecks. There's just 2 or 3 points I want to make here. So if we want to, if in our organization, the way that if our goal is to increase revenue, and that means we need to focus on improving the bottleneck, how do we actually do that? So as you know, maybe from your organizations, from your past experience, we need to complete work. But as we complete work, as we try to complete projects, it's not a straight line process. There's all these obstacles that just get in the way and slow us down. And there's 2 really interesting things about these obstacles. One thing is that obstacles tend to come from elsewhere in the organization. What I mean by that is, in my team, the obstacles I'm facing, or my team is facing, would generally be caused by something else deeper into the organization. If they were caused by something locally within the team, we would have removed those obstacles by now. We're smart, right? Any obstacles caused locally would have removed, and all that leaves is obstacles that are caused by something deeper in the organization. The second thing is that often the obstacles that I face are similar to the obstacles my team face, which are similar to the obstacles my neighboring teams face as they try to get work done. And if we trace where those obstacles are coming from, what's causing them, what we'll tend to find is we all get to the same point in the organization, the same process, the same policy, it's the same underlying cause. Similar to when you go to a doctor, a general practitioner, a family doctor, often, and I hope not, but often you might go with many, many symptoms. And the doctor will diagnose you and find that all those symptoms are caused by just 1, maybe 2 underlying things that can be treated. And the great thing about that is that if we can find what the underlying cause of all these symptoms or all these obstacles are, we can focus improvement on just a few things that matter. We can eliminate many symptoms, many obstacles, create widespread relief for many teams with less effort, just by focusing on a few things rather than many obstacles, many symptoms. So recap here is that an obstacle in one part of the organization is generally caused by something else elsewhere. And many obstacles tend to just have the same few underlying causes. And if we can find and tackle those few underlying causes, we get this leverage effect. We remove, by tackling just a few underlying causes, we remove many obstacles, many symptoms with less effort. Whilst we just go check Q&A, see if anything's coming up. No, keep the questions coming in even whilst I'm talking. I'll check back every now and then, please. If I'm talking too fast, if I'm not making sense, please just check in there. Right, so whilst we've been talking, the director of NCOM got together in one of the other halls, and they said, you know, that Simon guy, he's kind of funny looking, but he's got some good points here. The development team is, in fact, the slowest moving team. They are the bottleneck through no fault of their own. And there's some obstacles that we're seeing in and around the development team. We're seeing projects progressing slowly, particularly through the development team. We're seeing staff quitting, particularly developers, and we're seeing customers going elsewhere to our competitors. And so we've been thinking as a group of directors, what can we do to help? And we believe introducing Agile to shorten feedback loops will help, because that will help us find impediments in projects sooner and correct it sooner. Maybe it'll be a better way of working with staff so they won't quit, and maybe customers will see how their projects are developing and not go elsewhere. So the question I have to the audience, and I'll be patient this time in Q&A in case anything comes up for you, is this a good solution? Is introducing Agile in this case the right thing to do? So I'm going to remember to scroll down. I'm going to remember to wait. I'm going to have some coffee. Any reflections very welcome. Otherwise, I'll give you my answer. But I prefer your answers. They're always better than mine. So Flo says, not unless it's company-wide implementation. Curious. I like this. Thank you, Flo. Peter, can be in certain situations. Slap Agile on it. So I'm curious about these. These are really interesting because there's some constraints you're placing on where where and when Agile can help and where when it can't, which, if I'm understanding correctly, speaks to me very strongly. So let me continue. Keep the Q&A coming in. I realize with the delay, there's a slight constraint there. Right. Okay. So I think it depends, right? And this is what I'm hearing in your message. It depends. There's a lot that we can't see at the moment. So Russell Acuff puts it really well. He says, the more of the context of a problem that a scientist can comprehend, the greater are his chances of finding a truly adequate solution. And as I think, Flora, as you were hinting towards, right? The context here is the organization as a whole. And so for us to understand, is Agile the right solution in this scenario, we need to understand more about the organization. Michael, only if adopted in whole value stream concept to cache. I'm curious about this too. This doesn't feel wrong at all. And so if in order to understand whether Agile is the right tool or the right solution in this case, we need to understand the context of the problem. That scares me because organizations always seem so complex. It's really hard to understand if Agile is the right solution in this case for this organization. But this is where Steve Tendon really nicely steps in. He says, businesses often seem complex, but how can they be? We created them ourselves. If they seem complex, it's just because we haven't joined the dots. And cause and effect thinking is one way of joining these dots, one way of us understanding the context of the problem, the organization, so we can see whether Agile or another solution is the right tool for this particular job. So that's what I want to use today. I want to use cause and effect thinking. I want to map out NCOM and show you what we found. I'm going to use a current reality tree from the theory of constraints, which is a very, very simple way of visually kind of mapping out the context of organization. So an arrow is an if-then clause. So if the lamp is not plugged in, then the lamp will not turn on. And a circle is an and clause. So if it is raining and if I'm outside, only then will I get wet. I'll tell you a story. I'll see a few messages coming in and I'll have a quick look at what's coming off people. Right. So these are the obstacles that were presented to us earlier by the directors. Staff are quitting, projects are progressing slowly, customers are going elsewhere. There's one other one which wasn't mentioned, which I'm aware of, which is that margins at NCOM as a whole are reducing. And even if we just look at some of these in isolation, we can already start to see some cause and effect relationships between these obstacles themselves. So if customers go elsewhere, if customers start going to our competitors instead of us, that might be one reason why margins are reducing. And also, if staff are quitting, that might be one reason, at least for a little while, why projects progress more slowly. There's something else that we saw that we're aware of at NCOM, which is timeliness was important to customers. If they were coming to NCOM to solve problems using software, custom software, then timeliness matters to them. And if timeliness is important to customers and projects are progressing slowly, that was one reason why customers are going elsewhere. Also, if finding, hiring, and training staff has a cost, and that becomes a necessity because staff are quitting, that's another reason why margins are reducing. There's something really interesting that was a little bit deeper in the organization, which was that staff time is fully utilized for delivering projects. And in isolation, that seems quite innocent, it seems quite common. There's some interesting elements to it. If staff time is fully utilized for delivering projects and growing skills takes time, it means that staff aren't developing their skills because they don't have the time. If they have 8 hours a day, they're spending 9 hours a day delivering projects. That leaves no time for growing skills. And if staff value skill growth, that's probably why they're going to quit. They can go elsewhere and they can develop their skills. If that is the case, it means there's fewer staff spread across the same number of projects, at least for a little while. And that means those few staff that are left are even more fully utilized. They're doing 10-hour days to deliver those projects. So we have a downward spiral here. Also, if staff aren't developing their skills, some skills are more rare. And ironically, multiple projects tend to require those rare skills. Murphy's Law. And so what that means is that those few staff with those rare skills are going to be the ones that are working across multiple projects. And if in reality, only one thing can be done at once, that's why projects progress slowly, because there's a few people spread across many projects and they have to split their time. If timeliness is important to customers and projects progress slowly, management's going to prioritize delivery. They're going to say, right, we need to get moving. If that is the case, and they believe that maximizing staff utilization increases the rate of delivery, i.e. if we keep everyone busy, we'll deliver more in any given period, then they're going to make sure they keep staff fully utilized. So we have another downward spiral there. So in summary, by keeping staff fully utilized on projects, they don't have time to learn. That causes two things to happen. It causes staff to leave because they can grow their skills elsewhere. They want to progress in their career. It also means that some skills become rare. And those rare skills mean that a few people need to be spread across many projects. Those projects then move more slowly. Customers get frustrated. They go elsewhere. Margins reduce. And on the other hand, margins are reducing because we're losing people that we need. And we're needing to rehire. So the question I have for you is, where is the common underlying cause? If you could wave your magic wand at any one box in this diagram to try and evaporate as much of this as possible, where would you point that magic wand? Going to be more patient. Going to see what's come up in chat. But yeah, put this in Q&A if you have any thoughts. And Floor says, I feel like the correct answer is it depends most of the time. Yes, I agree with that. Only one thing at a time. Don't disagree. Curious where you would focus your improvement efforts. Which one of these boxes, and only one of these boxes, that you would focus improvement on if you had that magic wand. And then I'll give you my simplistic answer as always. Two things are coming. Morgan says, slow down to go faster. Invest in people. So both of these I like. I'm curious about, Morgan, which box that might be, which box you might be alluding to. Alina, I'm assuming you're kind of thinking around this space, perhaps from your point of investing in people. Don't disagree with that. This is good. Peter, for me, I think multiple projects require a rare skill. It helps a lot if you're using tech, which everyone knows, and then your delivery time could be much faster. So you're kind of looking around here. Don't disagree. This is interesting for me. It helps me see things I just wouldn't have thought of. So I agree with all this. Anything else coming up for people? I appreciate the interaction. All right, let me jump in, because I've got a timer here that says 16 minutes left. Ooh, okay, so I better get moving. I should stop giving you all the hard work. Right, so I believe this one over here. Maximizing staff utilization increases the rate of delivery. So it's just a few clicks before where I think a number of you are looking. I think a number of you are looking around this area. And the reason is that if we tackle this, the rest of this, I believe, will dissolve. But let's come back to that. So I have a question now. I'm going to keep it rhetorical and answer it just in the interest of time. As much as I'm enjoying the interactions, I realize they're slowed through the delay, and that's my fault, not yours. So this is meant to say, what would be the impact of the original solution? And so the original solution was introduce Agile to shorten feedback loops. And I had to really think about this. I realized Agile means a lot of different things to many different people. So my use of the term there isn't very helpful in itself. But the only place I could think that this could be helpful is perhaps over here, where timeliness is important to customers. If timeliness is important to customers, and we're able to give them demos, for example, of the progress that we're making as an organization on creating the customized software for them, it might start to help them build confidence in what we're doing as they see what we're doing to come to life. But the problem for me is, if our delivery mechanism is slow, the more that we do demos, the less progress they'll see between demos, and actually it might cause frustration because they're not seeing the progress they want, and we might actually encourage them to go elsewhere. So I don't feel that Agile in this particular case will help. It's not that Agile is good or bad, it's just, is it fit to the context? In this case, I don't think it fits the context. So recap, cause and effect thinking can help us find and focus on the underlying causes. I promise I'll come back to that. Understand why focusing anywhere else that isn't underlying cause leads only to temporary improvement, as we saw with Agile in this specific case. And Russell Ackoff puts this really well. He says, we fail more often because we solve the wrong problem than because we get the wrong solution to the right problem. And in this case, fully utilizing staff, I'm going to skip that. Right, interlude. Right, this is the interesting piece where I want you to either have a piece of paper in front of you or imagine you have a piece of paper in front of you. And I want you to imagine on that piece of paper, you have 9 dots in the shape of a square, like so. The challenge I have for you is, can you connect those 9 dots without taking your imaginary pen off the imaginary paper with just 4 straight lines? And you can see me trying this on the right-hand side and failing. I'm trying to join those 9 dots with 4 straight lines without removing my pen from the paper. And I can't seem to get the last one. So I just want to give you a minute to have a go at this. Maybe in your mind, maybe with a real piece of paper if you're in front of a desk with some paper and a pen. And then I'll give you an answer. And I promise this is relevant. I promise this one is relevant. Again, if you're unsure what I'm of the puzzle here, just throw something in the Q&A, whatever I can do to help. I'm just going to give you a bit of thinking time in the meantime. Peter, can I use 3 pens? In this case, I think I said 1 pen, so no. But this is a good question. This is a good question. I think you're starting to poke in the right direction here, Peter, so I like it. Right, I'm going to move on, and let's see if you could work it out, because I couldn't work this out, right? So one answer, and this comes from Ackoff's book, The Art of Problem Solving, link in the bottom left. Oh, excuse me, is that if you realize that you can go, if you go beyond the edge of the dot box, for lack of a better term, you can actually sweep around and do this in 4 lines. And there's one other answer that I didn't get as well, which is that if you actually fold the paper, you can actually do 6 dots with 1 line and then sweep around and get the last 3 with the remaining 3 lines. So Peter, you're kind of moving in exactly the right direction. You're kind of poking at assumptions here. And so Russell Ackoff does this really well. He describes what you're trying to do there, Peter, which he says, creativity is shackled by self-imposed constraints. And therefore, the key lies in developing the ability to identify such constraints and deliberately remove them. And so I couldn't find the top right solution because I couldn't break the assumption that lines must be drawn within the perimeter of the square. That was a self-imposed constraint I had when I was trying to solve this problem that was never specified in the problem statement, but kept me shackled. And I couldn't find the bottom right solution because I didn't realize I held a self-imposed assumption or constraint in this case, which is that the paper must lie flat whilst lines are drawn. If you realize that that's not specified and you can uproot that assumption, you can find that bottom right solution. Right, so recap. Creative solutions often come from surfacing and reevaluating our assumptions. And if we now come back to NCOM and we look at this thing over here, isn't that an assumption? And the question really is it a valid assumption? I'm going to answer this one cheekily here. It's not a valid assumption. We've seen empirically how it plays out. We've seen the cause and effect chain of events that happen, right? We've seen that if we maximize staff utilization, we actually prevent them from learning. And that's what's leading to all the problems we're seeing. It's why staff are leaving, and it's why some skills are rare. And if some of those skills are rare, it actually chokes our ability to deliver. So we've seen empirically how it plays out, and theoretically from Kingsman's formula, we know this is incorrect. If we think about CPUs, if we load a CPU above 80%, depending on the variability of work, queue length grows to infinity. And studies have done this with people in stores, right? If we utilize individuals more than 80% or teams more than 80%, again, queue lengths will start to approach infinity. So we know theoretically it's wrong as well. And my friend on Mentor puts it really well. He says maybe one way of doing this is really never planning to more than 40% of a person's or team's capacity. And that way we have 20% capacity available for continuous improvement, and we have 20% for unplanned work, and even then we're still not exceeding 80%, so queue lengths won't grow. So I'm curious what will happen if we swap out the assumption on the left-hand side that's driving management behavior here through no fault of their own, and instead plan work to 40% of staff capacity rather than trying to maximize staff utilization. Before we get to that, though, let me recap, because there was a lot that's been said, forgive me. Often the underlying cause of obstacles is an assumption that no longer stands. Correcting the assumption can help dissolve the problem and its effects. One question I have, I think this is probably the last question, we have 9 minutes left, is where can technology help? So if I said you can wave a magic wand of technology anywhere on this diagram to try and help erode some of this, where would you wave that magic technical wand, for lack of a better term? Can technology help here? Maybe let's exclude ChatGPT, because I realize that one's a bit of a funny one. That can do all kinds of things that are difficult to go back in time. I like that one. That are difficult to quantify and qualify with a bit more in-depth conversation. No doubt it could help with certain points there. But yeah, any technology ideas? I'm sure ChatGPT actually could be one we discuss. It might take more time. Floor says remove friction in gaining access up to speed. Ooh, I'm interested in what technology that might look like for. Automate the rare skills that people have. Interested in that one, Eleanor. I think that's. I've got a few more. Morgan says some technology skills are rare. Be less dependent on those specific ones. Peter, automation of processes, knowledge sharing, open AI. You went there, Peter. So Morgan, don't disagree. So all of these, I don't disagree with any of these. These are great. I think one interesting thing though is. Sorry, these answers are coming in and there. They're very, very good. I'm getting distracted by this. This is really good. Yeah, these are good. These are good. Okay, right. So let me move forward. So let's do automation, and we could even replace this with remove the skills, the rare skills, right? Remove the need for those rare skills. I believe that if we automate the manual tasks, right, that would provide some temporary relief to staff, and that might give them a little bit of time to learn. So it has a knock-on effect. But I realize that if this assumption remains in place, as soon as we see people have a little bit more capacity, we're going to give them more work, because that's what our assumption is telling us to do. That's the behavior that is driving. So I believe until we replace this assumption on the left-hand side, any relief that we create for the staff will be temporary at best. And therefore, we need to replace that assumption. I believe if we replace that assumption now, where we're not overloading staff, we're loading them up to 40% of planned work, it means that staff will consistently not be fully utilized, and they'll consistently have time to develop their skills. And that means consistently some skills will become less rare, and staff will not quit for that reason. And that means we don't have this downward spiral of fewer staff being spread across less projects so often. If some skills are less rare, then we don't need to spread those few staff across more. Oh, sorry, I'm back.
We had a little hiccup, but you're back, I think. Sorry, folks, while we're trying this out. Seems like we have a little. Yeah, there you are. You're back. All good.
I'm sorry.
Don't worry about it. It's not your fault.
Thank you. I should have gone with one of the other answers, then maybe you wouldn't have crashed me out. That's what it was. So yes, sorry. What I was saying there was that if projects won't progress so slowly because those rare skills are no longer rare. We won't need to spread the same people across many projects. And that will give less of a reason for customers to go elsewhere. It means margins won't reduce for that reason. And it kind of dissolves the whole problem here. So automation may provide some short-term relief to overwhelmed staff. However, all problems will remain if staff time is fully utilized for projects. Change the assumption to change the behavior and dissolve the problem. Some other invalidated assumptions, these are other ones that I've encountered that seemed true at first glance, seem to be valid, but only through seeing how they played out empirically or seeing conflicting theory did I realize they were correct. There may be all things that are very, very obvious and inherent to you. If I was to try and summarize this presentation in one quote, again, another Akoff one, the principle of obstruction to an organization getting to where its managers most want it to be lies in the minds of those managers. Summary, key points. Technology can bring bottom line benefits if and only if, one, it diminishes the bottom line. If we didn't have those developers, we faster as we helped. PC, right? And secondly, assumptions perpetuating the bottleneck are reevaluated. In this case, keeping developers, keeping all staff fully utilized. If we didn't poke that assumption, we'd never be able to remove the bottleneck in the first place for those developers. So it's not get better at delivering technology, but better at solving problems and using technology where appropriate. Cause-effect thinking, as we can see, can help. Now what? Here's some books that have helped me as I craft this presentation, helped me learn a lot more, display some of my own assumptions. This is the website with the QR code. Any questions in the last 3 minutes? Anything that seems incorrect, please. Again, sorry for dropping out.
Awesome, thank you. You dropped out a little bit at the recap bit too. So can you go back a couple of slides because I want to take a screenshot real quick for for purposes. Awesome, thank you so much. This was a wonderful talk. Do we want to scroll through the Q&A section and see if there's any questions, except for people sharing popular and unpopular opinions in my case?
No, please.
Right, you mentioned a couple of resources. Are these also beginner resources for people that want to know more about how to sort of adapt to this way of thinking? Yeah?
Absolutely.
That's fantastic. Can we get that slide back up one more time so that people can have a look? Of course. And then I want to thank you so very much for your time and your presentation, but it's also lunchtime. I mean, depending on people's time zones, of course, but it is lunchtime, so people might be tired too. So thank you so much. This was a wonderful talk. I laughed and I cried a little. And that's the perfect combination. So thank you so very much and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, Flo.
This is all we got. Remember the revolution in our minds. This is all we got. Lock me out of this life institution. I am angry and high on illusions. Yes, I hate, but it's not a solution. Try my best, but I'm just a human. Oh, we don't need to say we're sorry. We don't need to worship heaven's heart.